Did you know that the average human in this modernized world consumes around 15 grams of dietary fiber a day? Not too shabby, right? That is, until you find out that this number is a little less than half of the daily recommended dose from most health overseeing bodies, and a mere fraction of what some of our ancient hunter-gatherer ancestors once consumed, which was estimated to be somewhere around 80 plus grams a day. Probably nothing, right? You know, let's just take a quick look, just to be sure.
Alrighty then.
Yo, what is up? Welcome back to another week of How to Health. My name is Kevin. I run liftandbalance.com, where we take aim at all things health and longevity and do it in an odd, weird, interesting, and highly sarcastic manner. Today, we're going to talk about one of the most controversial topics in the world. Exciting, right? And that is whether there are more doors or wheels on this planet. And we're going to start with a quick quantitative I'm just kidding. The topic that we are actually talking about is the excess consumption of red meat on our health and longevity, and specifically its relationship with the second leading cause of cancer death on the market, colorectal cancer, or colon cancer. Now, before the pitchforks and torches come out or the parade route is set, depending on what side you're on, this video is not meant to classify it as good or bad. There is just too much variability in the data to condemn non-processed high-quality red meat. The focus today is really on the benefits of adding fiber to the typical standard highly processed diet that most people consume in this modern world, which tends to have a hefty serving of red meat, among other things. And to do this, we are going to take a look at a new randomized control human study, which teased out how consuming a specific type of dietary fiber called resistant starch can improve one's overall health and surprisingly mitigate some of the potential cancerous downsides of consuming a lot of red meat. And you know, of course, anytime we get to geek out on gut health, we're going to take the opportunity and not look back. So let's start with a quick run through on what exactly resistant starch is, talk about the latest hubba with red meat, then move on to this new data that just hit the scientific streets, and as always, finish up with some tactical strategies for you to noodle on. And I gotta say, is it just me, or are you guys starting to get a little hungry too? First, what the hell are resistant starches? It just so happens that most of the carbohydrates in our diet are starches, or long chains of glucose that are found in grains, potatoes, along with various vegetables and foods. And these glucose conga lines are typically broken down in the stomach and small intestines. Standard procedure stuff, right? However, not all the starch you eat gets digested. There are a particular group of rebel starches that venture through the digestive tract unchanged. In other words, are resistant to digestion. And that, my friends, is resistant starch, a compound that has been associated with improved insulin sensitivity, lower blood sugar levels, reduced appetite, better overall digestion, and reduced risk of colorectal cancer. Impressive resume, right? But how exactly does it do all this? Well, the main reason that this type of starch is proving to be so impactful is because it functions like soluble fermentable fiber, moving through the stomach and small intestines undigested and right on down to an eager group of awaiting fiber munchers, aka the tens of trillions of gut bacteria or microbes that call our colon home. You know, those little guys who have their tentacles of wisdom on the biological function of pretty much all of our major organ systems and biological processes. Yeah. This ecosystem in the gut is often coined the microbiome, and resistant starch happens to be some of our microbes' favorite food, at least the good health-promoting ones. And in return for this fiberlicious sacrifice, they secrete beneficial metabolites and short-chain fatty acids, such as butyrate, which then get absorbed into the hottest club in town. Club circulation, great place, a lot of fun. Providing a health-promoting, gut wall solidifying, inflammation lowering, I could go on and on here. The gist of it is a lot of benefits for their host, aka us humans. And don't worry, I will link some good research reviews to get you up to speed on the vast influence that this ecosystem has on our health and longevity in the show notes below. Long story short, resistant starch along with dietary fiber act as a fertilizer for our good health promoting gut bacteria in our colon and help optimize our health. The problem is, most people don't eat with their microbes in mind. Most people follow the societal norm and accepted ultra-processed diet. High fat, high sugar, preservatives, additives, low fiber, and typically a fair share of red processed meat. But is red meat really all that bad? Red meat's bad rep. Alright, first, another reminder. This video is not meant to be a crusade for or against red meat, because quite frankly, I think the jury's still out. For the most part, long-term observational studies of heart disease, cancers, or death, and controlled trials for risk factors such as cholesterol and inflammation suggest that a modest intake of unprocessed red meat is relatively neutral for health. However, there is a correlation that we want to keep an eye on. Several systematic reviews of cohort and case control studies have found that high red meat or processed meat consumption to be a risk factor for colorectal cancer, or if you remember, the second leading cause of cancer death in the westernized world. And the plausible mechanisms here include DNA strand breaks and higher prevalence of DNA mutations. There's also been data that suggests that high red meat consumption can also be linked to changes in the microbiome and inflammation. In my eyes, this is one of those delicate areas where it is all about the context, needing to take in all of the variables at play. And although there can be healthy ways to consume red meat in one's diet, for example, grass-fed, unprocessed, no antibiotics or preservatives, the average person doesn't follow these guidelines and many times combines this with the health deteriorating modern day high fat, high sugar, ultra processed diet, which in of itself has been independently associated with colorectal cancer and a whole lot of other things. So let's see what this new research has to say. The data. An Australian research team out of Flinders University explored if mixing resistant starch with red meat had any impact on known colorectal cancer microRNA signatures in the gut. And for reference, microRNAs are a class of non-coding RNAs that play an important role in regulating gene expression. And to do this, they used a well-designed, randomized controlled crossover study where 23 participants, 17 male, 6 female, ages 50 to 75, ate either a red meat diet or a red meat plus resistant starch butyrate supplement diet over the course of 4 weeks. Afterwards, they had a 4-week washout period and then proceeded to switch to the other diet for another 4 weeks. This allowed researchers to collect gut signatures from each participant on each diet, as well as the group as a whole. Gotta love crossover data, right? The daily meat consumption consisted of either 300 grams of beef or lamb strips, not indicating grass-fed, grain-fed, or processing status, and the resistant starch consisted of a 40-gram daily supplement taken with either milk or juice. Throughout the study, researchers collected fecal samples and rectal mucus samples, where they measured microRNA expression changes, target gene levels, as well as cellular proliferation, which is a signature for tumor growth. So, what did they find? After eating 300 grams of lean red meat per day for 4 weeks, study participants displayed a 30% increase in the levels of certain genetic molecules called microRNA 1792 in their rectal tissue, an mRNA family that has been previously associated with cell proliferation and cancer. This is a not so great indication that some funny business is brewing down there in the colon. However, when participants consumed the 40 grams of resistant starch supplements along with the red meat, these microRNA 1792 levels returned back to baseline. Interesting, right? But what do you think's going on here? the data found a significant increase in 3 short-chain fatty acids, acetate, propionate, and butyrate, in the fecal samples of the red meat plus resistant starch group compared to the entry diet, or their baseline. There was also a significant increase in propionate and butyrate for the red meat and resistant starch group compared to the red meat group alone. All in all, the authors concluded that red meat and resistant starch have opposite effects on colorectal promoting microRNAs, specifically the microRNA 1792 cluster, and that this finding supports consumption of resistant starch as a means of reducing the risk associated with a high red meat or processed meat diet. Reiterating, though, that no causal relationship could be formed between consuming red meat and colorectal cancer. So no matter what side of the eating fence you're on, the case for a little resistant starch is quite compelling, don't you think? Now, how do we take this information and get a little tactical? Getting tactical. Listen, I'm not here to tell you how to eat. My goal is to present the information to help you come to your own conclusions of what you put down your pie hole. Hopefully it's not a lot of pie. Just saying. That being said, I will remind you that those tens of trillions of creepy crawlers in your gut do indeed have either a direct or indirect influence on basically every single biological process that you have. Translation, your daily mood, feel, cognition, cravings, physical performance, energy levels, and, as we saw today, disease risk. So helping them help you may be the very best thing that you can do for your short-term health and long-term longevity. And in this case, helping fend off the second leading cause of cancer death in Western society, colon cancer, which also happens to be one of the most preventable types, as we discuss here. So whether you eat a meat-heavy diet, no meat at all, or end up somewhere in the middle, adding some resistant starches and dietary fiber into your life is more than likely going to enhance your biological business. So what foods check this box? Well, a good starting list for resistant starches includes bananas that are still slightly green, cooked and cooled potatoes, beans and lentils. Chickpeas are a great one. Some nuts like cashews, or as always, you can always look for a high quality supplement. Although, I always like aiming for the real stuff. And although resistant starch and dietary fiber are slightly different, most real whole fruits, vegetables, beans, and legumes have healthy servings of one, the other, or both. So you can't go wrong there. I do, however, want to give you a quick word of training before jumping on the fiber train. Going from 0 to 60 on the fiber intake overnight can cause some gut distress, discomfort, and bloating. This is many times the byproduct of gut microbes' interaction with this new abundance of fiber. So as always, if you can, you want to baseline your gut first, as we talk about in this video here, and slowly and methodically add more resistant starch and dietary fiber in the form of real whole foods, giving time for your system to adjust and the microbial communities to change. Remember, we're playing the long game here. And if you happen to not be where you want to be, or just need a little extra support, you can join our weekly challenges in Patreon, where we as a group implement longevity-focused sustainable change week by week, habit by habit, getting healthy from the inside out. All of the links for that will be in the show notes and comments below. For example, this week is going to be all about helping our microbes help us. So feed your fiber munchers and help them help you already. Oh yeah, and the gas, it's just them saying thank you. I think I gotta go.